An old lady was very ill and she was dying, and she sent for the priest, who eventually came along and anointed her and gave her holy viaticum and told there was no fear to worry. And he said, in the bosom of Moses. No, not rocking in the microphone. You'll be rocking in the bosom of Moses. She said to him, soon I'll be rocking in the bosom of Moses. And he said, no, Mary, not the bosom of Moses, but the bosom of Abraham. She said, Father, at this stage, I don't give a damn whose bosom I'm in. So there you go. Now, let's be serious and try and very quickly and concisely and in a synoptic fashion, really, do a little synopsis on the gospel this morning. And really, it's about dying, so we have to look at that. And I just want to maybe paraphrase a little bit of the gospel for you and focus in on Mary and Martha. They're in the house. They're very angry. They're angry with God. A lot of people go through that. If you lose a child or a close relative or a brother or sister, you often feel people are angry. Why did she die so young? Why didn't I pray to God and He didn't hear my prayers? So Mary and Martha are sitting there in the house. They've sent a message to Christ a few days earlier, but they got word back, I'll go in my own time. God always has a plan. God always has a plan. And eventually when Jesus arrives, how does Mary greet Jesus? She doesn't go out and say, oh, I'm glad to see you. She says, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. And Jesus said, your brother will rise again. And she said, oh, don't talk that rubbish. No, seriously, you can imagine. Don't give us that. It's a bit like sometimes when somebody dies and you go along to the family and say, oh, well, they'll be with the angels now. Well, you want them to be here with you rather than with the angels. I mean, isn't that how you feel? Or, a child dies and you say to a mom, oh, you have got a little angel in heaven now. She'd rather have a little angel here in her arms, wouldn't she? This is human nature. And Jesus says, I know He will rise again. And when Mary comes out, she has the same reaction to Christ, and she's angry. She's angry also. And that's very normal and that's very natural. And then we really see that Jesus, the humanity of Jesus. We sometimes forget that Jesus was totally human, just like you and I. Just totally human. And so we're told, and I love that phrase in the Gospel, Jesus wept. Because Lazarus was his friend, and Jesus wept. Even though, as God, He knew He was going to do what He was going to do. So, now we have to look. And Jesus wanted Lazarus to die. He wanted him to be in the tomb for 3 days so that he could try and convince those hard-necked apostles that he had around him and the people, do you really believe that I am God and that I can do this, and that you have to go through suffering before you go through the resurrection? So, how do you put that into modern day language? And it is, life is about loss and renewal. Loss and renewal. Continual loss and renewal. And sometimes we get stuck in the loss. We get stuck in the loss part without being aware of the renewal. Look back on your life, any one of you. Has your life not been a continual loss and renewal? You go through difficult times, you come out of them, and you look back and think, I'm glad I went through that loss and renewal all the time. Everything is dying. Excuse me. There's nothing permanent in this life. Look at the sun. The sun, I came across an extraordinary thing that I didn't know before, so don't think I'm very clever. I'm not. The sun is dying at the rate of 6 million tons of hydrogen per second. And yet it continues to warm our solar system and give life to every living thing on our planet. So, everything in its nothing remains forever in its present form. Now that's a very important phrase. Nothing remains forever in its present form. I find that very consoling. Nothing remains forever in its present form, including ourselves. Death is not the opposite of life, but the full process of life. Can you see that? Death is a part of life. That's what Jesus is trying to tell us. That is so important. Nothing remains forever in its present form. The two vital words there are present form. Present form. Just pause for a moment. Would you like to remain forever in your present form? I wouldn't. I wouldn't. So nothing remains forever in its present form. Death is not the opposite of life, but the full process of life. The full process of life. So that is beautiful if you think about it. And so, how do I feel personally about dying? I'm grateful to God for every day I had. I'm grateful to God for every day I had. I get out of bed this morning grateful to God for another day. I know for some of you, getting out of bed each morning is a mini resurrection. Or maybe a major resurrection. but in a certain extent, every day you get out of bed, it is, isn't it, a mini resurrection. You wake to a new day, to new life that's not yesterday. And today is totally different from yesterday. And it's a beautiful day, thank God. It's a beautiful day. And the question for us in the Gospel this morning, to finish on this, Jesus said to Mary and Martha, I am the resurrection of life. He who believes in me will never die. Do you believe this? And that's the question for us this morning. Do you believe that? Do you really believe that? And if you really believe that, why do you spend so much time, especially as you get older, about dying? It doesn't make sense. If you really, and I underline, highlight, really, if you really believe in that, why worry so much about dying? And the best way to prepare for dying, and the only way, is to live life to the full. Live life to the full. Way back in the year, I think, 250, a famous man called Irenaeus said, "Fear not that someday you'll die. Fear rather that you have never really lived." And sadly, a lot of people are like that. There's people walking around today who died at 25, but they won't be buried until they're 80. That's why in Chicago one time, an undertaker had a notice on the window, "Why walk around miserable when we can bury you for $100? And you know, it's very true. So the lesson from the gospel this morning, Lazarus was taken out of the tomb. He probably was annoyed. Have you ever thought about that? There was Lazarus. All his troubles were over. And who knows, he might have wanted to get away from Mary and Martha. Well, you never know, Tom. Yeah, yeah. That's pure heresy, but anyhow. Yeah, pure unadulterated heresy. But he might have had. And then, poor fella, they bring him back to life again. So he had to go through the whole process of dying again. We don't know how long he lived. But Jesus wanted to prove, believe in me, and that's it. That's simple, isn't it? So will you remember that phrase? Nothing lasts forever in its present form. And death is not the opposite of life, but the full process of life. The real completion and full process. Let's stand.